All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If this is your first time joining us, we are all about bringing science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. So if you head to exploringbytheseat.com, you can find a huge list of events that your classrooms can join throughout May. Really easy to sign up. And we hope to see your classrooms joining us throughout the month. We are going to jump into a really special event today. This is the third of 3 events with the NOAA's National Marine Sanctuaries. We've been exploring all along the coast and the depths of California. So today, in the third event, we are traveling to the depths of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We're going to meet research specialist and lead scientist Chad King, as well as education specialist Josh Holl. So in October 2020, NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries partnered with the Ocean Exploration Trust to expand our understanding of the sanctuaries through deep water exploration and research. So using the exploration vessel Nautilus, scientists from the Ocean Exploration Trust and the Greater Farallones and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries ventured deep under the surface to explore Pioneer Canyon, which has incredible deep sea corals, sponges, and fish, including an amazing area called Davidson Seamount, an extinct underwater volcano. I had the amazing experience of spending 2 weeks on board the ship and getting to hang out with Chad and explore some of that deep sea sanctuary, and they returned again last year. So I am going to bring Justin in to start things off for us. Justin, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us, Joe.
Oh, Justin, so great to have you. We have a great group of classrooms on camera with us. We have tons of students, hundreds in fact, joining us live via YouTube, and they're already sending in lots of comments. So I do want to give them a quick shout out and just remind them that now, after you say hello, the comments, we want to save them for questions. I don't want to be looking for the questions, and I don't want to have to mute anybody. So let's save that question spot or that chat bar for some questions. Justin, I'm going to let you take over for a bit.
Thank you so much, Joe. Well, hello, teachers and students and the broader Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants and National Marine Sanctuary communities that are all tuning in today. I'm so excited to be here to share some tales of scientific discovery from the exploration vessel Nautilus deep sea research cruise that happened last fall. So this cruise delved deep into the depths of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary in California to explore the fascinating deep sea corals and sponges, also to tour an octopus garden and even a whale fall, which is kind of like a whale skeleton on the seafloor. Today, I'm going to be talking about the coral and sponge communities in this very special place called Pioneer Canyon. And my colleague, Chad King, he's going to be taking you to the octopus garden and the whale fall. But from my perspective, I just got to say, everything about this cruise was very exciting. But I want to start things off with a poll that you can just simply answer in the chat so we can all kind of start getting ready to dive into this deep sea mentality. So I'm curious, think to yourself here for a second, which of the following are you most excited to learn about in our talk today? Are you most excited about deep sea corals and sponges? That's what I'm going to be talking about. Are you most excited about the famous octopus garden that Chad's going to talk about in a bit? Or are you most excited about a whale skeleton on the seafloor? So you can just type that into the chat. First choice would be corals and sponges. Second choice would be octopus garden. And third choice would be whale fall or whale skeleton. I'm curious, Joe, are you getting some responses from Chatland?
Yeah, there's about a 10-second YouTube delay, but they're starting to come in now. I've got whale fall already. Whale fall, whale skeleton, octopus garden, whale fall. Whale fall is most popular so far. If I look at our camera classrooms, octopus garden's in the lead. There's 3 out of 4 have responded octopus garden. And back on YouTube, let's see, octopus garden. I'd say it's neck and neck between the octopus garden and the whale fall right now.
Awesome. Well, that doesn't surprise me. And it's great because our research specialist and lead scientist, Chad King, who's an incredible explorer, he's going to be presenting right after me with those great stories to tell. So I'm going to be kicking it off with the corals and with the sponges, but don't worry, we're going to leave time for Chad to do those presentations. Also today, I wanted to mention behind the scenes, we have Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary's very own education coordinator, Amity Wood, and she's going to be monitoring the chat, helping with questions. She might put some resources in the chat. So you can also put questions in the chat for Amity. She is a wealth of information and was part of the research crews as well. So again, as I mentioned, my name's Justin Holl. I'm an education specialist for Greater Farallones. And this research cruise was a joint cruise with Monterey Bay and Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuaries. And I'm going to kick off this presentation by telling you just what these national marine sanctuaries are all about for some of you who might not know too much about our National Marine Sanctuary system. So they're a network of underwater parks, includes over 600,000 square miles of marine and Great Lake waters. Wow, 600,000 square miles from the Olympic coast of Washington State to the Florida Keys and from Lake Huron out to American Samoa. And this network, which is known as NOAA's National Marine Sanctuary System, it includes 14 of these national marine sanctuaries and also 2 national monuments and even 2 new proposed national marine sanctuaries in the Great Lakes. And I just wanted to mention that there's really few places on the planet that can compete with the diversity of the National Marine Sanctuary System. It protects basically the US's most iconic natural and cultural marine resources. But let's zoom in a little bit today. It's an amazing system, but we're going to focus in on the West Coast. So let's get in here to the West Coast a little tighter. Yeah, that looks better. And we're going to be looking at Olympic Coast, Greater Farallones, Cordell Bank, Monterey Bay, where all the action's happening today, and Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuaries. They make up our West Coast region of the system. And these 5 marine protected areas that are along the West Coast, they're all linked by the California Current. It's basically a broad, shallow river of ocean water. It's really a current, but it's kind of like a river of ocean water that meanders down south along the Pacific coast, and it carries cold, super nutrient-rich water southward from the North Pacific. And it really kind of shapes the whole nature of our West Coast. The ecosystem's among one of the most productive in the world. And the sanctuaries along our West Coast, they share some similar biological profiles and some of the same physical oceanographic dynamics. All right, so now we're going to zoom in even a little further into the main event today, which is in Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And this is a map of the sanctuary. It's a big sanctuary, and it includes Davidson Seamount, which Chad's going to be talking about a little bit later. But just to kind of orient you where we're talking about for this Pioneer Canyon first part that I'm talking about, let's zoom in a little closer here. And it's an underwater canyon. The eastern half of Pioneer Canyon is in the northern portion of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And there are kind of 2 heads to the Pioneer Canyon, if you can see them inside that little, that red square. And the southeast head's about 30 kilometers west of Pillar Point, which is in Half Moon Bay in San Mateo County, for those of you that might be familiar with San Mateo's coast. So our main objective in 2020 was to describe the extent of these deep sea corals and sponges and the associated invertebrates and fish within these deeper portions of Pioneer Canyon. So we're talking about kind of from 800 to just under 1,500 meters. And it's long been thought that Pioneer Canyon had this diverse seafloor habitat with long-lived deep sea corals and sponges, but we just didn't have very much quantifiable data of the habitats in the canyon. There were a few records from maybe some fishermen accidentally collecting some corals and sponges in their fishing gear. There were a few dive records from a submersible in the 1980s and 1990s, and that revealed some really exciting news that there were long-lived, these cold water bamboo and black corals in the canyon. But those surveys used older technology with relatively poor video records, and they just weren't quantifiable. So our sanctuaries protect these amazing and iconic waters. So to really protect them, we really need to better understand them. Now, thanks to the Ocean Exploration Trust, the technology was at our fingertips. It's come a long way. It's almost bordering on miraculous how far the technology has come. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got down to see some of these critters. But let's start by just looking at some of the groups I mentioned. There's some hard corals. There's soft corals. These are right off of California, these beautiful, colorful corals. There's these invertebrates. This is another thing that we're kind of studying, maybe sea stars, other echinoderms, basket stars, crabs. But corals and sponges were a big focus, and a lot of the fish, the main group of vertebrates are the fish. So how are we going to get down there? We're talking 800 to 1,500 meters to study this area that we really need to understand better to protect it. But how do we get down there to study it? We were lucky enough to partner with Ocean Exploration Trust and the exploration vessel Nautilus. And they gave us the platform to run the ROVs, the remotely operated vehicles, to get down there, to get some of this amazing footage that I'm going to share with you in just a second. So what does this boat have? Well, it's a 64-meter ship. It can have 17 permanent crew members on it. It can have up to 31 people who are visiting on the ship. Now, like a lot of you who've been doing remote learning or distance learning, in October, many of us were distant scientists and educators from shore. We were communicating with the vessel through telepresence. So that's one of the things that it's equipped with, because as Joe knows, when he was there, the Nautilus is famous for kind of live streaming this amazing footage out to the world as they're collecting it with the ROVs. And luckily, because they had that technology in place, scientists and experts from really all over the country could tune in and actually help guide the dives from home. All right, so what does this boat have? It has two remotely operated vehicles called Hercules and Argus. It has a wet lab on it. It's just kind of like a researcher's dream. It has like a control deck, and I'm curious if anybody would ever like to maybe work on a research vessel like this. If you were, this is another poll question that you can put into the chat. If you could be anybody on the research vessel Nautilus, what do you think you might want to be? Maybe some of the things you could be would be like the captain or a scientist or a cook or somebody who is a pilot who drove the remotely operated vehicles. Imagine yourself for a second on this amazing research vessel and maybe choose a job for yourself. You know, what would you like to do if you were, or if you were a scientist on it? What kind of scientist might you be most interested, or what subject in the ocean might you want to be an expert in? Joe, you getting any hits there from our friends out in Chatland?
Yeah, we're just waiting for YouTube to catch up, but a few are coming in. The first one is cook. That's the first one that came in. We've got some captains. We've got scientists. A few more cooks coming in. Let's check our live classrooms here. Diver. Someone else here wants to be the captain, pilot of the ROV. Yeah, that's a cool one. Science officer. So yeah, lots of science officers, lots of divers, and then a couple cooks and captains as well.
All right. Thanks for sharing. It's nice to check in with people, and also it's kind of fun to pretend like if you could be anything on a research vessel, what would you want to be? Great. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Hercules, which is the ROV that we're going to take a look at here in just a moment. It's equipped with high definition video cameras, LED lights, manipulator arms, sensors, samplers. It's kind of an amazing thing. So let's take a look at it and check it out. And we're going to see some of the footage that was collected in October of 2020. So this is the Hercules going overboard, being deployed. It's connected to the Nautilus by a tether. And again, we're exploring diversity at Pioneer Canyon to see what's down there at about 700 to 1,000 meters. And so that you can see they're being really careful about getting that in the water. And now we're coming into our first life here that we're seeing. This looks like a sea pen. And it's amazing how high quality the video is that we get from the ROVs. You can pan it around, zoom in, get really close. We're trying to take a little look at what we call like a little brittle star here. And you can see the currents going pretty fast here. You can see its little delicate rays are drifting around in the water. And this is like what we were doing when we were down there was this little reel is sort of like highlights some of the most interesting or unusual things that we saw. But we also did just a lot of mapping where we would do a line survey, just kind of keep going at the same speed without stopping. And we would just be trying to characterize what the habitat is there to see if there were coral colonies, maybe where we thought there were coral colonies, to see how many of the different species of corals, soft corals, and vertebrates were down there, to see if there were species that we weren't expecting to see, and just doing a kind of systematic scientific survey to characterize what it looked like down there. That last fish was a grenadier. This one is a cat shark, and there's some green dots that you can see. Those are 10 centimeters apart, which helps us measure specimens. And again, we didn't know what it was going to look like till we got down there, but look at those alien, cool Dr. Seuss looking organisms. Some of you might know what those are. They look like crinoids to me. There's some soft corals mixed in, crabs. And one of the things that we were doing on this mission was looking at some mapping data. We thought we would find corals in certain areas, but we needed to put our eyes on the seafloor in order to make sure that we actually could predict where maybe corals would be. This is an egg case from some kind of mollusk. So maybe from a nudibranch or maybe some kind of gastropod that was kind of particularly interesting. And last but not least, this is my favorite view coming up that we saw in the entire cruise in Pioneer Canyon. That is coming up next that I want to share with you as kind of like a grand finale here. Look how beautiful that is. This is a bubblegum coral, and it's surrounded by those little towers. Those towers are actually egg cases from a snail. There's anemones and all of these brittle stars that are living up in the coral. And this is actually an anemone that we found on an old piece of pottery. And some enthusiasts who were watching the live stream did some quick research and found out that it looks like it's from a ceramic company called Ironstone. And somebody must have lost or tossed a broken dish into the ocean, and this anemone found a home on it. All right. Well, I want to be aware that there was a lot of enthusiasm to see our Octopus Garden and to see our whale fall. And so I'm going to actually turn things away from Pioneer Canyon's video highlights here, turn things over to Chad so that we can all see the main event here and hear about the Octopus Garden and the whale fall. So thank you guys so much for learning a bit about Pioneer Canyon. And thanks again, Joe, for having Greater Farallones and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuaries represented today.
All right. Well, we've got Chad bringing him into the call, but Justin, I just have to say thank you so much for that great introduction. Thanks for taking us into that world. And you're right, that alien world, and people really liked your Dr. Seuss comment in the chat. That went over really well. So thanks so much for taking us into that world today.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, Chad, it's great to have you joining us live. It's been a while since we were shipmates on board the exploration vessel Nautilus, but I'm excited to let you take over for a bit and take us back there.
All right. Well, thanks, Joe, and thanks, Justin, for that great introduction to the kind of the sanctuary system and some of the technology aboard the exploration vessel Nautilus. So I'll be talking to you about that particular cruise today, but also a little bit of background on the Octopus Garden and the whale fall itself. As Joe mentioned, we were shipmates back in 2018 when we did discover the whale fall, so he's very intimately familiar with this exploration. So I went ahead and shared my screen. I hope it's up for right now. I don't know if Joe can confirm that for me.
Yep, we're up.
Absolutely great. Okay, so we already introduced a little bit, or Justin did, about the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, but I'm going to focus on this area down in the lower part of the screen called the Davidson Seamount. It's an extinct volcano that last erupted almost 10 million years ago. So there's no threat of anyone in California having a problem with this volcano erupting 50 miles offshore. But the actual seamount itself is actually quite tall. It's almost 8,000 feet tall. So if any of you drive to Tahoe, you drive over something called Donner Pass. So the Davidson Seamount is about as high as Donner Pass is from sea level. But yet its base is still almost 4,000 meters deep. Its summit is still 1,200 meters deep. That's over 4,000 feet. So it's in perpetual darkness. There is no light at all that penetrates this deep in the ocean. So the entire mountain is in the dark. However, it is one of the best studied seamounts in the world, but that's all a relative term, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So some of the amazing discoveries we've made on Davidson Seamount since 2002, when we started exploring this seamount, have been pretty incredible. From Justin called it a Dr. Seuss land, and that's exactly what it is. As you can see, these vibrant colors and shapes of corals and sponges and fishes and invertebrates and so many other things. It's really been an incredible land of discovery down there. And that's actually what led to the inclusion of Davidson Seamount into Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary in 2008. The sanctuary itself was designated in 1992, so this was kind of an add-on about 13 years ago or so. So Justin already talked a little bit about the Nautilus and the tools, but again, to familiarize yourself, these are the two main ROVs, the Hercules and the Argus to the right. And they really communicate via this tether to the Argus, which is the first ROV. It's kind of the little baby cousin of Hercules. The main workhorse, though, is Hercules, the yellow one pictured there. And so all of this information is transmitted through the tethers and the cables back up to the mothership, where we sit as scientists and we can see a live image while we sip our coffee and discuss, oh my gosh, look at this. What should we do next? What should we collect? We talk to the ROV pilot on where to go, the navigator, the person who operates the manipulator arm to grab certain samples. Hey, I would like that rock over there. Can you slurp up that little invertebrate? So it's a really large team that are working together in constant communication. But this year in particular, in 2020, of course, like Justin said, all of you guys have been online. My kids have. We had to do much of this research from the comfort of our living room or office. But that's really difficult when you're trying to communicate live to the pilots and the navigator and the captain on the ship. This is just a close-up of the ROV itself to give you an idea of how big it is. There's a person there on the left. You can see how many bells and whistles are on this thing. It's basically the size of a large SUV, but it's a lot more expensive than that. It has an amazing array of tools, from lights and sensors and vacuums and filters and boxes. Just, it has everything you could think of on here. That's a picture of the Argus, which is the little cousin ROV that floats above, but it also has a camera system on it as well, so we can kind of see the Hercules from a grand perspective. You already saw some launch video, but this is how we do it off the side of the vessel. Now, back in 2018, this is the cruise that Joe was a part of. We are at the very end of a long dive, about 30 hours. That's the benefit of a remotely operated vehicle over a submersible. A submersible is something... It's basically a submarine where a person or people can be inside. We're limited to how long the human can be down there, right? You have to eat, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to sleep. Well, ROVs don't need to do that. They can be in the water for 2 or 3 days at a time. And so we just rotate shifts on top or in our offices. And so we're able to make these very long dives. So it was at the very end of this 30-plus hour dive, we were about ready to pull, and we came across this just incredible assortment of octopus. This had never really been seen anywhere else in the world but one place in Costa Rica. All these little balls that you see on the ground are octopus. Now, normally they're solitary animals. It looks like they're kind of congregating together, but there's only one reason why, and you may or may not be able to see it through this video to your school or your classroom or your home, but we saw this shimmering coming out of the seafloor. And we later measured the temperature of the water, and we realized it's warm. much like kind of on a hot summer day, you look across the pavement of the schoolyard and you'll see everything kind of shimmer. It's the same idea here. The warm water is refracting light in different ways, causing that shimmer. Well, there's something about the warm water that's attracted these octopus. These are all mothers that have come in and laid their eggs, cemented their eggs to the rock within the warm water. So they have this very unique brooding posture, they call it, where they invert upside down, much like a flower. They're the only genus that does this. The genus is called moose octopus. But we saw them in these incredible patterns that corresponded with pools of seeping warm water or lines of seeping warm water. And so it was clear to us that there's something amazing going on here. So it was two major discoveries at once. One, thousands of octopus together brooding their eggs, which was incredible. And number two was warm water. This had never been discovered off the coast of Central California. Davidson Seamount is an extinct volcano. We're like, where's the warm water coming from? It's a long scientific process that I'm not going to get into too much detail, but this was a brand new discovery which has geologists very excited here. So the other thing that we discovered in 2019 when we returned to the Octopus Garden, and a lot of you guys are excited about this too, was a whale fall. And so this was incredible. We were just transiting from one place of these large sedimentary cliffs to this volcanic cone. We had no idea this was here. You can't. So as we're zooming across the muddy seafloor for about a mile, we picked up something on sonar and we investigated it. And sure enough, it was a dead whale on the seafloor. And so we've later discovered this is a minke whale, which is actually a relatively small whale, only about 15 or 16 feet long, but it was relatively fresh. It doesn't look like it necessarily to kind of this layperson's eye, but there's still some cartilage and flesh and heart tissue and baleen and all sorts of stuff on this animal. And there's still a lot of scavengers, as you could see, octopus, fishes, crustaceans, crabs, those kinds of things. And so what was incredible about this is this was only about a 4-month-old whale. Or I shouldn't say it was 4 months old. It had been on the seafloor for only about 4 months. But you could see all these little fuzzy projections coming out of the bone. These are actually a really interesting animal that was only discovered and described in 2002, so less than 20 years ago. They're called bone-eating worms, and they're really a unique animal that burrow into this whale skeleton, and they have a symbiotic bacteria that lives within their gut cavity. Actually, they don't have a gut. I should say they live within their body cavity. So they'll actually harvest the oil and fat from the bones. The bacteria will basically metabolize it and excrete carbon. And so the worm gets food from the bacteria. The bacteria gets a nice house and protected place to live, a little bit of shelter. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship. So there were many different types of worms growing on here, and we actually collected a lot of them, and we actually discovered a new species of worm on this whale. So it was really, really exciting for all of us involved back in 2019. So what we're able to do is use the ROV to go around the whale several times to get really good video of it. And what we were able to do is digitally reconstruct the whale skeleton into a 3-dimensional model. And so I'm sure Joe, I can provide him with links and he can provide all of you with links. But if you go to sketchfab.com and do a search on whale fall, this will probably come up. But you can actually load this onto your computer and spin it around kind of like a virtual reality thing. In fact, you could even put it on your phone or put it on your VR headset if you have one, and you can actually turn this whale around. So it's really, really cool to be able to visualize this entire whale skeleton. This is just a map showing kind of a zoomed up close-up of the seafloor. We have great technology aboard the vessel in which it uses sound to image the seafloor. So this is where the whale fall was on the left. The octo-cone, which I'll get to in a second, is on the right. They're only about a mile apart. So in 2020, we were able to return to the octo-cone and the whale fall and keep the ROV down because it only had to swim or drive about a mile to the west. This generated a lot of buzz in the entire science community. So the BBC had a week-long telecast called Blue Planet Live. And so they invited me out on the research vessel Atlantis to actually go into one of those submersibles called the Alvin, a very famous submarine. It has over 5,000 dives now, and I was able to actually physically transport my body 2 miles down, which I neglected to mention. This is over 10,000 feet deep, 3,200 meters. So it takes a long time to get down there. But me and 2 pilots were able to go down to the Octopus Garden, and I got to see these octopus mothers essentially face to face. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever done in my life, and something I will never, ever forget. But it was an incredible experience. We had a great time down there. We were able to document the temperature of the water for the first time. We also discovered the first hatchlings ever at this site. And here's some screen grabs of some of the video I was shooting from inside the sub. And so these eggs that the mother octopus cement to the rocks do eventually hatch. And here are some screenshots of some of the little babies coming out. It was really, really incredible. I also don't want to neglect to mention Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, who's also been actively participating in research of the Octopus Garden since we discovered it back in 2018. They've been a very valuable partner. We've been able to go out with them at least 4 or 5 times to visit this area, and we have a lot of exciting research that we've been doing with them. Specifically this last October, we wanted to go back out. Of course, Justin talked about Pioneer Canyon, but we also wanted to revisit the Whale Fall and the octo-cone, which was a second distinct population of more than 3,600 octopus moms we found at the summit of this little tiny volcanic cone. That's about 6 miles away from the original Octopus Garden. And so here's some video, as I bring it up here, of the return to the octopus cone, I guess the octo-cone you could say. Here's some perspective shots from the Argus looking down into or onto the Hercules. It was just incredible. So you can really see the shimmer there. This is a second spot, totally different geology, real big bulbous rocks, all this pillow lava from when this volcanic cone erupted 9 million years or so ago. But you can really see that shimmer. So this is, again, these octopus mothers cementing their eggs to the rocks within this warm water. Now, some of you may be asking, how warm is this water? Well, naturally down there, at 10,000 feet, water is near freezing. It's about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. That's like 34, 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Way too cold for us. This isn't hot water, mind you. It's warm water. Let's say it's around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It's kind of the temperature of the water, maybe even a little bit colder, of Central California water when you go to the beach, right? So it's something you probably still need a wetsuit for. But it's far above freezing. And so what we think is happening with these octopus mothers is the warm water is probably, and we don't know this yet, this is a lot of the research that's ongoing, it's probably accelerating the development of their eggs and shortening the time it takes for their eggs to hatch. Deep sea animals take a long time to do everything. Their metabolism's low, they eat very infrequently, they grow very slow, and they live many, many, many years. Deep sea octopus, one other species, was found to actually take 54 months until her eggs hatched. 4.5 years she sat on those eggs. Now, mind you, the mother octopus, after they lay their eggs, do not eat. So this mother octopus did not eat, did not do anything but sit on her eggs for 4.5 years. We don't know if this species takes quite that long, but they definitely take longer than a lot of their shallow water cousins who maybe take only 3 months. So we think the warm water is accelerating the development of their eggs, and they basically make more babies as a population, and it helps the species produce more kin as we go on. So here's some screenshots or some frame grabs of some of these aggregations of octopuses at the octo-cone. A lot of other animals live there too. Tube worms, anemones, shrimp, other crustaceans, all sorts of stuff that we don't have time to get into. You can see that yellowish pale stuff cemented on the rock. Those are all tube worms associated with that warm water. Again, more of this, aggregation of octopus. You can see them form these distinct lines. They don't line up because they want to be in formation. This is because this is where a crack in the seafloor is allowing warm water to escape, and that's where they're going. It's kind of like, I don't know, my dog on a cold day wants to go lay on the heater to stay warm. So these octopus are kind of doing a similar thing for their eggs. This is what I was talking about, the octo-cone. We were actually able to map the population there, and we counted over 3,600 octopus, and this was just on one dive. So it gives you an idea of how many might actually be out there. And because we've discovered now 2 distinct populations in 2 years, we have a reasonable reason to believe that there may be quite a few more of these populations, but it's going to take a lot of money and time and planning to plan out future cruises to see if we can find a third, a fourth, or a fifth population, or even at different seamounts, not just Davidson, but Pioneer and Gumdrop and Rodriguez and all these other ones along the West Coast, let alone other places in the world. Most people who go out and explore seamounts want to explore the summit. They don't explore everything around the base. This is around the base where no one's ever looked before. So this is why it's important to go out and explore areas, even if you don't think they're going to be exciting. It was within our sanctuary, and we said, hey, we should take a look. And look what we discovered. So sometimes you really have no idea what you're going to find on any particular dive. We also returned to the whale fall, and it was really remarkable how different the whale fall was. It took us a little time to find it, but this was almost 12 months to the week, and it was completely different. You can start to see the image arise here. The ribs had all collapsed. The baleen had fallen out. All the scavengers were gone. It looked like it had just almost exploded. There were still a few tube worms or bone-eating worms that were present, but for the most part, it was really devoid of life. And so I'll go ahead and skip ahead because I know we're going to run short on time. But here's a great shot of the front of the whale. On the right is the discovered whale in 2019 when it was relatively fresh. And here is the shot of it 12 months later in 2020, this last October. You can see how different it was. So this stuff really happens quickly, but it's a boon. It's this amazing fall of calories and food to the deep sea. And the deep sea has been found to really rely on these episodic inputs of really a buffet that lasts for about a year for the scavengers and several years for all the little smaller animals that live in it. We're able to collect a lot of stuff from the whale itself. Here's some pictures of some of the other scientists aboard the Nautilus. And Justin was asking about who might want to be different roles on the ship. Well, these are scientific roles here where you help collect specimens, you help process them, you help preserve them, you help plan dives, you could be a navigator, you could be a pilot. There's all sorts of people related to the mission planning, execution, and the science of discovery as well. We've made some amazing products through the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and here's some examples of a couple of very beautiful posters they've made about the whale fall, not only the discovery, but the creatures within the whale fall itself. So we'll go ahead and pass those links on as well. So these are all free to download and to use at your classroom. There were a lot of other things, of course, we saw down there. It wasn't just the Octopus Garden and the whale fall. We found, this amazing squid here on the left. It's a Dumbo octopus because it has these funny looking Dumbo ears. Beautiful corals, the little fang-toothed fish down on the right, sea pigs on the left. I could go on for hours about those guys. But we had to do everything remotely at the beginning of the cruise for myself. I was fortunate enough to participate physically on the cruise. I did have to quarantine and get a negative COVID test, but it started out, everyone was at home, and here's my office setup where I had a live connection to everything on the ship and was able to talk to the ship and chat with the other scientists. When we were on the vessel, of course, we wore masks at all times. We made sure to socially distance, but I was on the boat for a week and everything went great and not a single person ever had any issues. This is the setup inside the control van. The chief scientist is what my role was, so I would sit right there in the lower right. But we have a data recorder, we have a navigator, a Hercules pilot, an Argus pilot, a video engineer, and then everybody else on the ship. So it's, again, quite the team that is required to run this. And this is the view of the operations from my seat, where we have these big screen TVs in front of the pilots and navigator, and then I'm in the background here with my own suite of several monitors to monitor data, communication, all sorts of other things going on. This is just a pretty shot of the Hercules being recovered at night. It has these powerful lights. This is just to show you how well it can illuminate the ocean as well. You might wonder what this is. Well, I just wanted to take 1 minute before we end here to talk about, we do a lot of research and it's a lot of fun, but I wanted to show you a little bit about life before and during a cruise. Sometimes when you got to go to the port, you have to go karaoke. So here's a shot of one of my colleagues who decided to go and get the courage to go ahead and sing a little bit the night before we left. Everybody was in a really good mood and we went out and had some fun. You also get to see amazing sights. We cruised under the Golden Gate Bridge as we left San Francisco. This is in 2019. So you do get to see amazing things sailing at sea. It takes a long time to get there. It took about 20 something hours just to sail from San Francisco to Davidson Seamount. You're not there instantly, right? You get beautiful sunsets. You get to watch movies with all of your colleagues. Again, this is before COVID, so that's why we're all together. We can't do that right now. This is on the Nautilus itself. Amazing food. If some of you who wanted to be cooks, here's an example of some of the food you can get on there, right? You get everything from breakfast and lunch and dinner, and you can eat anytime you want. It's really incredible. So if you're on a diet, it's really hard. But I got to say the Nautilus crew was really, really great in terms of prepping the food and taking care of us. You just might come off a little heavier from a week-long cruise. This is just a shot of the cafeteria where you can go eat again at any time. They have scheduled meal times, but you can go and grab snacks anytime you want. Yes, we have birthday parties on the ship too. So there's a lot of social activity. There's 30-something people on the ship. So we are normal people. We aren't just always doing science all the time. You can exercise. They have a gym on the ship. You can relax on the deck. There's a lot of things going on, but it's not always science 24/7. And then staterooms. This one's a little bit nicer than what you normally get, but you usually get a bed and a little desk. And this room I was lucky I had a bigger room, has a couch and stuff like that. So you have reasonably comfortable accommodations as well. So that'll do it. I know we're running out of time, but I think we're in for the question and answer period with Joe. But that's it. If anyone also wants to send me questions, my email is right there. But thanks for your time.
All right, excellent. Let me just pop that up one more second in case anyone wants to snag that email before it goes too quickly. And I bet Amity can share that as well. All right, very cool. Thank you, Chad, bringing back a lot of memories. That was pretty awesome. We thought that dive was over, and then we stumbled across that Octopus Garden. That was pretty incredible.
Yep.
Okay, let's start bringing in some classrooms. So if you're tuning in via YouTube, now's the time. Fill that chat bar with questions. We'll try and get a few of those in. And I want to start bringing in some of our live camera classrooms too. So first, I want to shout out to Miss Fox's class. They're grade 7 and 8 class. They're in the call, but their devices aren't connected. They're going to send some questions in via the chat. So I'm going to keep an eye out for those. Let's go to Mr. Douglas's crew. They're in Toronto, Ontario. Looks like a grade 5-6 classroom. Let's bring Mr. Douglas in. There we go. Hey, Mr. Douglas.
Hi. Fabulous videos. Great stuff. Yeah, we want to know, what do those octopus eat down there if they have to sit on their eggs for 3 years?
Great question. So, unfortunately, and this is where if you've ever seen like My Octopus Teacher or a couple of the documentaries like that, my children were a little upset about this. But this is just the normal life cycle of octopus. But basically, they grow up, they eat, but when the females lay their eggs, that's it. They're done eating. They don't eat anymore. So their only job in life is to make sure their eggs are taken care of, protected, and oxygenated. And once the eggs hatch, the octopus go through something called senescence. Well, we're all going through senescence, but it's very rapid, and they end up passing away relatively quickly after their eggs hatch. So it's a complete mission of love and care. I don't want to anthropomorphize them too much, but they don't eat once they lay their eggs.
All right, great question to get us started. Let's jump to another group here. Let's go to Glenview, Illinois this time, 4th graders and Miss Michael's crew. Let's bring Miss Michael in. There she is. Hey, Miss Michael.
Hi. I'm going to see. We're remote, but I'm going to see if you can hear my student. Rosalie. No, James. James, you had a question. You can unmute. James. James wanted to know, how many types of octopuses did you see down there?
Oh, good
in the
question.
Octopus Garden?
Right. So the actual, there's only one species that do that brooding, that are on the rocks themselves. So it's just one, called Musoctopus robustus. They're about one of 13 or 14 species of the genus Musoctopus, but that's the only one we saw brooding down there. However, there are about, I don't have a list in front of me, but I would, if my memory serves me correct, about 4 or 5 other species of octopus and squid that we saw, episodically throughout the dive.
All right, really great questions. I'm going to snag one here off of YouTube now. There's a lot there. But one group here is wondering about the ratio, scientists compared to crew members on board the ship.
Good question. So typically as chief scientist in 2018 and 2019, I was able to take 6 or 7 science crew members from Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. But we also have people that are employed or are participants through Ocean Exploration Trust. We usually have at least a couple of science communication fellows, a whole team of scientists that work in the lab as well. So the scientist crew, I believe, is around 12 or 13. And then we have the pilot, the navigator, and the other associated kind of engineering crew, but a lot of them have the science background too. So they're really a part of the whole science team itself. And then we have the actual captain and all of the support crew for the ship itself.
All right. I'm going to bring in Mrs. Spa's class. So there they are. Give a big wave. Hey, Miss Spa's class there. Very cool. All right. Why don't you grab that mic for us, and we'd love to steal a question. Good to see everyone.
Okay, we have Tommy had a question. Tommy, will you come over here? Thank you, guys. What is your question? Yeah, read out loud.
How old can a whale get?
I might have to defer to Justin on that one. We don't, for this particular minke whale, we don't know what the age was. It was an adult, but we don't know specifically the age. But I don't know if, Justin, you know how long blues and humpbacks can live.
Yeah, I don't know offhand, but I did just take a quick search on minke whales, and it said around 40 years, though some have been found to live up to 60 years for a minke.
All right, very cool. I'm going to snag another question. Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm going to snag another question off YouTube. Why did you each choose your career? So Chad and Justin, whoever wants to go first, why did you choose your career?
Boy, it's a great question. I get that often. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, a doctor, a paleontologist, or marine biologist. Well, soon I discovered, I'm not going to be a Major League Baseball player. I lost interest in medicine, and paleontology still stuck with me until I went to the beach when I was probably around 9 or 10. Not for the first time, but I was always afraid of what was underwater. I never went in past my waist deep because I didn't know what was out there. And something always intrigued me about it, and it was really fear of the unknown that gave me the motivation to acquire the knowledge to defeat that fear of the unknown. And my interest just exploded when I was kind of, 11, 12, 13 years old. And that became my passion. I consumed everything I could about marine science. Always watched the Discovery Channel and PBS specials and old Jacques Cousteau stuff. I mean, I ate it all up. And so that was absolutely something I wanted to do in my career. And, a lot of other people want to enter marine biology, and they may get frustrated with classes or the lack of jobs or opportunities. But if you're passionate about it, you will make it work. You will find a way, you will network, you will do well in school, do well in math, do well in science. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm just really, really happy that I stuck to my guns, because I got to tell you, my career has been so much fun being able to do stuff that I couldn't have even imagined, 15 years ago. So it's been great.
All right, Justin, let's get you up in there.
Yeah, well, some of it, taking it back, I grew up doing a lot of cross-country running, a lot of distance running, and I just loved being up in the hills studying patterns. I didn't know I was studying patterns, but I just was so interested in like what plants and trees and flowers grew where and what animals lived in different places. And then when I got to college, I was just amazed that there was this whole field of ecology and biology and geology that I could get into. They weren't really subjects I had background in. So I think what was important for me was working at field stations and place-based, projects. So just like our national marine sanctuaries, they're an actual place that you can go study. In fact, we need to study so that we can understand them and protect them. So going to places like Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve or Hopkins Marine Station, as an undergraduate, and working at Jasper Ridge and flying to Chile and living there for a year to work at a Chilean marine laboratory, I just kind of couldn't get enough of these field stations and place-based areas. So I'm really grateful to be working with Greater Farallones, and it just kind of keeps rolling. I love tide pools and getting in the water when I can.
All right, good stuff. Science really can be a great gateway to see the world. So definitely think about science careers out there for the students. Mrs. Daugherty's group are hanging out with us in Pennsylvania. How are we doing today? Oh, can you grab the mic? Oh, we had you. I think you double hit the mouse. So we had you, then we lost you.
Am I back?
Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. We've been enjoying this so much, and my students have been asking so many great questions, some of which you answered. But I have a question. I have students who are amazing scientists and artists, and that 3D model of the whale, what kind of career is that where people can actually generate 3D models of things like that, like the whale?
Absolutely. So it definitely kind of crosses between digital art and just the science of it as well. So what's really cool about technology today is it's something called photomosaicing, right? Where you can actually download apps on your smartphone to do this. It's pretty remarkable. And if you get the right app, you can actually take pictures of an object from all points around the object. Let's say it's a little statue or a cup or whatever. And the software will know the different angles in which that picture was taken. And it can compute and predict or know where each of those pictures was taken from, and then put that together in a wireframe and then place the imagery on top of it. So that's essentially what we did with the whale fall, but with thousands of photos. So the software is very good at making a wireframe and inferring the position of every bone and every piece of skin. But then the art comes into it at the end because there's a lot of errors and uncertainty, and it takes a person in there to, oh, let's throw that photo out. Let's throw that photo out. Oh, let's keep this one. Let's move this. Let's move that. So it's a specific career of digital art, but I worked with some engineers at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute that actually just had the software knowledge to do it. It's actually something that I'm learning right now to do for NOAA. But I think it's just one of those little skills that you can pick up, but I'm sure there's a route to become an expert at it.
Thank you.
All right, great question. Miss Connolly's crew, let's bring you in. How are we doing today?
Hi, we're good. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
My class has expressed a lot of interest in coral and just why it takes so long for coral to grow and how long they can live for, how many types of corals there are. And we also would like to know more about sea pigs because you very quickly mentioned them and we Googled them and they look adorable. So we'd like to know a little bit more about those too.
Yeah, the sea pigs are great. They're a type of sea cucumber, right? So they're an echinoderm. And they look like they have, a little pig's body with little pig feet. Well, many of them, right? And these little antennae. And they're kind of pink in color. But they're really just sea cucumbers. So they're vacuuming up the sea floor and then essentially pooping out the dirt in the back and absorbing the nutrients in the meantime. But we see them on big muddy plains quite commonly. And in fact, just recently we published a paper that saw an association between sea pigs and these juvenile crabs that would hide under them for protection. We still don't know exactly what the sea pig's getting out of this deal, but it was a really cool kind of combo. So yeah, we love those guys. They're really charismatic. Corals, and Justin may be able to add to this, but at Davidson, that was the main reason it was added to Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. There are certainly many dozens of species at Davidson and up and down the central coast of California. Most of them live centuries. There are some species of black coral that are known to live over 1,000 years. There's one species of gold coral in Hawaii, which isn't here, that was dated to over 4,000 years old. But it's a little bit of a conundrum because the way you age them, you have to get the base of the coral. We don't want to rip off corals that might be thousands of years old to date them. So we're very cognizant of that fact and we kind of leave them alone. But they take centuries, if not millennia, to put down these calcareous, carbonate skeletons over a long period of time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add to that is that, Chad has a lot more background in corals and all this deep sea research. I'm a lot like a lot of you teachers. I'm an educator full time, but I had this amazing opportunity to be part of this research cruise. And I learned so much because there was a lot to learn since I didn't have as deep of a background in it as a lot of our scientists. And so one thing maybe Amity, you could help me out here that you could put in the chat is a field guide that Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary put together. It's the kind of the Big Sur field guide that has so many of these species in it, the Sur Ridge Field Guide from Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And there are local Monterey Bay or near Monterey Bay species. And I just thought that was such a great way to kind of get started. And you can also watch the Nautilus live footage from, it's on YouTube, and you can look at these dives and kind of follow along with the guide if you really want to get into this, students and teachers.
All right, good stuff. Great series of questions about coral from Miss Connolly's crew. Mrs. Riley's class, there's everybody. How are we doing?
We're doing good.
All right, we'd love to steal a question.
Okay, we have a question for you.
What are the names of the tiny sea animals that builds the
Coral reef.
The coral reefs? And number 2, where do coral reefs get their different bright colors from?
Wow, that is a great question. A lot of times corals that maybe you're familiar with, the coral reefs in shallow tropical waters, they get their colors primarily, not always, but primarily from the algae that live within them, right? They have these symbiotic algae that actually convert sunlight to food. And so there's a lot of problems in shallow reef areas, especially in Australia and other parts of the Caribbean. There's a lot of coral bleaching because the water has gotten too warm over the decades, and the algae are basically expelled, leaving just the white skeleton of the coral. Now, these deep water corals don't have any algae in them because there is no sunlight that comes that far. So they're only relying on food that passes by them in the water column, and it's a whole colony of thousands and thousands of little polyps. They're cnidarians, right? So they're related to anemones. So think about anemones and their tentacles. They have tentacles coming out of all these little holes in the calcium carbonate skeleton, grabbing pieces of food and eating, and then they grow more and more of these skeletons and polyps. It's just different proteins that create the different colors, which aren't necessarily for a specific reason because it's dark down there. There's no reason to be, necessarily be red or blue or pink or anything in between. However, we have discovered there are several species of soft corals, and even some of the hard corals, but mostly soft corals, that will light up. They have bioluminescence in them. And so we've taken them into dark rooms on the ship and touched them, and they'll actually pulse with this green-blue glow. And we're still not entirely sure what purpose that serves. But as far as what gives them kind of the bubblegum corals, the big pink corals, that's just a protein in their skeleton where I don't think it has any advantageous, situation or anything like that.
All right, great question. We've got one more class to visit. Miss Sheehan's class. There we go. How are we doing today? There she is. Can you grab the mute for us? We can't hear you. Oh, I see some faces. Looking for the mute. Oh, some light. Yeah. Hey, everybody. And then can you unmute for me, Miss Sheehan?
There.
There we go. Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. How old was the whale fossil?
Oh, great. So the whale itself can live to about 40 or 50 years, as Justin kind of just quickly searched there. The whale probably was on the seafloor for only about 4 months, so it had probably died 4 months prior to the discovery. And it was an adult when it died, but we don't know exactly how old it was when it died. It could have been 5 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old. We're not sure, but somewhere probably in that range.
All right, very cool. Well, it's always so great to see all the different classrooms, whether they're virtual or whether they're in the classroom. Always great to see them. I'm going to grab one more here from YouTube just to wrap things up, make sure we don't ignore everybody. And I think this is a great one. Global warming. So this is such a deep sea environment. It seems so disconnected from, what we know where we are. Are there some impacts that this area might be facing due to global warming?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the big things that's threatening the deep sea is something called ocean acidification, and that's related to global warming. So probably you kids have heard about global warming and climate change, right? Well, a lot of it is caused by excess carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere from human activities. Combustion of cars, factories, all the other things that we put into the atmosphere. Well, the ocean, even though it covers 2/3 of the earth, it does an incredible job absorbing the excess carbon dioxide. If it wasn't for the ocean, we would have a runaway greenhouse effect, probably like Venus by now. Maybe not that bad, but temperatures would be warmer if we had less ocean out there. Well, the ocean is absorbing all this carbon dioxide, right? More carbon in the water means more acidic water, okay? It's more acid. And the problem is that some of the shell-bearing organisms, the acidity is getting too high for them to lay down shells in certain areas. But most of the animals in the shallow waters are subject to a lot of different ranges in temperature and acidity, and they can withstand it for the most part right now. Deep sea organisms and the deep sea environment has evolved over millions and millions and millions of years to have that much of a band in temperature change and acidity change and other things, right? So now that humans are causing acidity to go up and up and up, the tolerance is so small for these animals that we're afraid that eventually it's going to cause a serious problem with shell-bearing organisms, including gastropods, corals who lay down calcium skeletons, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of research focused on the deep sea right now to understand how these animals may tolerate it and when they're not going to be able to, because we're already starting to see those effects.
All right. Well, I am going to put Amity on the spot here. I'm going to bring her in because I think that we should have a quick hello and a shout out because she's been sharing so many great links with us in the chat. Tons of great links. Everything really that Justin and Chad asked for, she just had it up there. She was answering questions. So Amity, great to see you today, and thanks for joining us behind the scenes. A huge shout out to our YouTube crew, hundreds and hundreds of students, so many great questions in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us today. And then of course, Chad and Justin, thank you so much for joining us and taking us to that amazing part of the world.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joe.
All right, good stuff. Well, thanks again, everybody. If you head over to our YouTube channel, you can find the other two events where we visited different parts of the California coast. And there are two great events. So 2 California coast and 1 up in the Olympic National Marine Sanctuary. So definitely do check those ones out. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Have a great rest of the week. We are going to sign off for today.